money will find you. If you have a solution to a problem and it is profitable, money is green. We look at Robert Smith, and we look at Oprah Winfrey, and we look at folks like that. They were able to solve needs in the business world, and their clients are all kinds of colors. However, your natural market tends to be who you start doing business with first, and then you might branch out to other markets.
You are now part of a social experiment.
See now where my limit is. Only got no ohs. It's like they just wanna see you struggle. I swear they don't wanna see you shine. They don't. It's like they just want you to bleed and they want you to fall. They don't want you to be where the streets are paved with gold.
Welcome to MasterMine, the home of Black excellence and self-mastery. Here's your host, Mr. G.
Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us today on the journey towards self-mastery. Our next guest has over 30 years of experience in business and financial consulting. He's a best-selling author with 2 books, Teach Your Child About Money Through Play, and Your Business Venture, The Prep, The Pitch, The Funding. He's an award-winning small business owner and a philanthropist. He's founder of the next generation of African-American Philanthropist Group. He's also the winner of the Lynetta Gilbert Service Award that awards individuals and organizations who are improving their communities through philanthropy. Let's welcome today, Mr. Linsey Mills to the program.
Thank you, Mr. G. Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you today.
Yes, sir, man. Definitely a pleasure having you on the program. One of the things I like about your work is that it is, you kind of simplify it to the understanding where I feel like almost a middle school kid can kind of get it. So I appreciate, that level of, intricacy and detail to be able to simplify things, because I feel like sometimes when we write books and we do literature, it's sometimes very complex and very wordy, and a lot of people just put it back down. They don't understand it. So I could see the work that you did really just trying to simplify it and make it easy, like an easy read for everybody. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And we try to make it on where everybody can understand it. And it's kind of like when they write newspapers, they write it at a 5th or 6th grade level. And so that's what we try to do. We try to make things simplified from a complex world.
That's exactly what we need. So I appreciate it. Before we get into your amazing books, your award-winning work, I kind of wanted to talk about your story a little bit, man, coming up and North Carolina and some of your early experiences that kind of led to the person we have with us today.
Well, I grew up in Jacksonville, North Carolina, in eastern North Carolina near the beaches, and big military base there, which is Camp Lejeune. And my father was in the Army in Vietnam and grew up in Jacksonville, and that's where he decided to stay. And so I grew up in that rural environment, and things were good for us. We used to go outside and play till the street lights came on, and just kind of get into different things as we were growing up as kids, and had an opportunity to just watch my dad, who was definitely in my life, and my mom. And he was one of my heroes or role models as far as I wanted to, do the things he did and go hunting with him and fishing and play baseball and those things. And so I had a good upbringing where I can say that I was fortunate enough to have, both parents in my household, which really helped me develop, seeing both sides of, my parents and how they kind of flowed through life, and my grandparents. And so I saw different things just from that family standpoint, but I also saw them, how they were disciplined with their monies and trying to help other people. And so it had a big impact on me as I was growing up, just with all that foundational, familial and, just a great community to grow up in.
Got it. I know early on in your book, Business Ventures, you talk about your entrepreneurial spirit growing up and, some of the things you were trying as a kid, to make money and to be an entrepreneur. I think those things are important because they're like the foundation of what, you ended up doing in life. So can you share with us like some of those things that you looked at doing like as a grade school kid,
Sure.
running around?
Well, one of the things is I always had a passion about money. I used to have money hidden in my room, under my bed, and I had a bank account. I mean, a bank, and it was this little rectangular bank, but it actually had a combination, like a safe. And so
Mm.
I'd have my little combination there, and I would fill it up with quarters and dollars and pennies, and every week I'd count my money. And so that's kind of how I kept track. I count my money every week, wrap my pennies up and spread out my dollars and my other things. And so I was just very big in, for some reason, in money and finances, even as a kid, with the few coins and dollars that I had. And then when I was in the sixth grade, is one of my earliest memories of my entrepreneurial venture. I had a friend who he was in school with me, and he would access or get this candy. He'd bring these big bags of candy, penny candy is what we used to call it, to school, and he'd sell it. And then, I was in some of the classes that he wasn't in some of the honors classes, so he couldn't get to that market. And so he asked me if I'd be willing to sell some candy. And I said, sure, I'll get my bag. And he would buy it for 1 cent and sell it for 3 cents. And then I would get a cent, a penny, and he'd get a penny, and he'd pay back his original investment. Well, I saw that the folks that I was around would pay 5 cents for it. And so I would sell it for 5 cents, keep my 3 cents, give him his 2 cents back. And so I was able to generate a profit off of no investment in. And then what I decided to do was take some of my profits from my candy sales and buy not only penny candy, but buy things that are a little bit more expensive, like 5 cent candy, which I could sell for 25 cents to $1. And so I just took that opportunity to build my own little business and venture, and with my own client base. And so I've always looked at opportunities to, get introduced to a business concept, but then how can I expand it and scale it and grow it in my own network of customers?
Right. Kind of reminds me, I was watching, forget what talk show, but they were interviewing this white kid, and he was talking about how much money he was able to make selling candy. And I'm just
Sure.
like, we've been doing this forever. Like, so it kind of just reminded me of reading your work, like, so how many, peers of mine that were selling candy and making good money, some of them getting in trouble, but all for good cause. So that was really interesting. So in your book, The Business Venture, you talked about just business really not taught in school, and financial literacy not taught in school. And it's a quick excerpt I just wanted to read that kind of made me think about a few things. Give me a second. So you were mentioning just like that you were a little confused about why financial literacy was not taught in school. So you said, in my research, I found that our modern education system was designed to teach up-and-coming factory workers to be punctual and obedient. Factory owners wanted great workers who did their jobs and adhered to their manager's rules. If you think about it, sitting in a classroom for most of the day with a teacher is the ideal training for this future. So maybe financial literacy is missing from schools to keep us coming back to work daily. This means going to work, getting paid, spending money on expenses such as your mortgage, your rent, your food, gas, and clothing, and then repeating the cycle. This cycle is repeated because we need more money to pay for food, clothes, mortgage, rent each month. So I just found that very fascinating, just that whole research and everything. So I'm guessing that the financial literacy that you got was kind of through your own, or were your parents, family members like giving you that? Because obviously, you weren't getting that in school. So what was your financial literacy?
Well, I can let you know, similar to, I think, my sister talked about, which is Andrea Stevenson, things that she learned, I kind of taught to her, and I've learned from my parents and shared. So one of the things that my parents did was, my dad, first of all, he was a big saver. So he used to have at work, in his locker at work, he used to have this jar of coins and pennies, and he used always to keep that. It would be, if you ever remember, I'm old enough to remember the jars of creamer. I forget which brand it was, maybe Carnation Cream or some of these big jars that folks in that generation used to use those to save their coins in. And so my dad cut a hole in the top so he could slip his quarters and pennies and things. And he would always have a jar of coins at work. And every now and then he'd bring those in and cash them in and things, but he'd repeat that process. And so that's one of the ways that I started just collecting coins and monies and just having savings. And then my mom, she used to play this activity or game with us is she would borrow money from us. And then she would say, well, let me borrow $20. And then she would pay us back with interest and said, I'll pay you back with interest. And so that was her way of teaching us how if we have some money, we can lend it to somebody and then earn interest. And so she would pay us back with interest on the money. And so I just thought that was a really interesting concept because I always had a little bit of money. She wanted to borrow some and then pay me back with interest. I found that's a good way to make money. And so those are the things that we learned growing up. And then, of course, they had us pay their bills as far as going into doing the transactions at the utility places. And we would go in and do those transactions. And so we just thought that was...
Real quick, how early were you guys doing that? Just for parents that might be getting some ideas right now. How early were they, getting you guys to pay the bills and do all that stuff?
As early as I can remember. I remember, if nothing else, before we could even kind of write write checks and those kind of things for them, my parents would say, go in there and pay that bill there. And they would give us the money or the check or whatever, the money order to process it. And one of my fondest memories, I remember this one distinctly because my mom used to drop me off to elementary school. And so it wasn't before, it was prior to me being in the 5th grade, because that's when elementary stopped, I went to this store and she gave me the money to go in and make a purchase by myself. And I went in, I made the purchase. And when I came out, I gave her the change back. And she says, where's the rest of the money? And I said, well, that's all they gave me. And she says, well, look at this and do the subtraction. Is that correct? And I said, no. And I thought she was going to go in there and resolve it. She had me go in and let them know that I did not get the right change back and to resolve it. And so that was a big learning lesson for me that I never forgot. I remember the place we were at. I don't remember what we bought, but I knew I had to go back in there and let them know that they did not give me the right change. And so that was a big part of the learning experience. And so I've repeated that with my nieces and nephews and even my sister, and she's 11 years younger than me. I repeated that with all of the kids that I've had the privilege of, keeping or disciplining or being around. I will, whenever we're at a store or a restaurant, I always give them the money and let them go and make the purchase themselves and do the transactions with the cashier. And the youngest I've done that with is probably my 4-year-old or 5-year-old niece. I had her go up there and do the transactions. She was at McDonald's and she had to buy her ice cream or something. So I had her, tell me what she wanted at first. And then I sat in the back and then she went up and made the transaction and gave the money and those kinds of things. So I think that is that experiential learning and introducing kids to that concept very early gives them that confidence to do things later in life as far as finances.
Man, that is so powerful. You're giving me ideas, man. I'm like, I got to try that, try this. That is amazing, man. And I feel like sometimes we kind of we think that we're protecting our kids from the stresses of our bills and, having to deal with money and stuff like that early on. But, we don't really know that the kids' imagination, their mind, everything is like a sponge. So if you give it to them early, it just makes it so much easier for them to process as an adult,
Right.
So I think that's so powerful, giving it to them at that, bite-sized level early on and then, increasing it as you go and everything. Did your parents make it more difficult for you guys as you got into teenage years and all that stuff? Or, were you just doing everything, like paying all the bills and doing all that stuff? Like what would that get into?
Well, one of the things is they allowed us to have businesses. I remember my cousin and we would use my dad's lawnmower and his dad's lawnmower, and we'd have a, mowing lawns. And so they would take us around in a truck. We would unload and cut lawns, $20, $15. And then we would load up and go to the next one. And I remember, my mom and dad taking us around and dropping us off to cut lawns for family. And I remember picking, leaves off out of gutters. I remember doing those things. And even my grandmother used to, pay me to, once I got my license, she would have me drive her around to do her bills and to grocery shopping and those kinds of things. And then she would pay me gas money and money to take her around. So I was her Uber way before Uber came into. She'd call me up, and that's what I would do. And so, yeah, we've always had the opportunity and family support to do entrepreneurial activities. And then once I was 15 years old, I had an opportunity to interview and work at Chick-fil-A. And I always talk about that experience working that was Chick-fil-A when it was first getting started. So my boss, who was the owner, was the owner of that Chick-fil-A. I think he was around 30 years old, and he was an African-American gentleman. And so Pete Burgess was my first true boss in what I call the corporate world. And he gave me a lot of tools on how to be responsible and how to lead a team and that kind of thing, as far as, from a multi-million-dollar operation.
Man, you just had a powerful experience, man. That shout out to your parents, man, for laying that foundation, man. And I think, learning about that kind of stuff is very helpful for parents trying to figure things out right now.
Sure.
I'm going to listen to this a few times just so I can implement some things with my kids, man. So thank you for sharing that, man. I appreciate it. So you go to Davidson's College, and you are studying sociology, which doesn't have anything to do with finances, really. So
right.
What really went into you wanting to study sociology? And then when you got out of school, you didn't become a sociologist. So what kind of led you into the world of finance?
Well, I'm going to tell you the story there is I didn't go to school to go into sociology. I can let people know that. I was like most African-American males who are, pretty smart in school. I was going to be an engineer and make a lot of money. That was what I was going to school for. And actually, when I went to Davidson, I actually went on a football scholarship also. So I played ball. So with that process, first of all, I said, I want to be an engineer because I've already been recruited by, several colleges, and I can be an engineer. And they said, we have this program. It's called a 3-2 program. You go 3 years at Davidson, 2 years at the engineering school of your choice. So I already knew I was going to either go to Clemson or NC State after 3 years, and then get 2 years now to have a master's degree, a bachelor's and a master's in my engineering. So that was my plan. So once I got to Davidson, I started taking the calculus classes, the physics and all that. And I was sitting in class one day, 8 o'clock in a calculus 2 class. And I looked up at the board and I was like, I don't understand any of this stuff that he's talking about. And I'm not a very early morning person. So I was like, this is not for me. So I talked to my assistant dean of students at the time. And I said, I don't think I can do this. This class I don't understand it, and I'm not going to do well. And so I was very deflated, disappointed. And he talked me into saying, what you do is you find something that you like to do and classes that you like to take, and then you get your degree, and then you can go out and have a good career. And then my football coach at the time told me something that was very important. He said, all you have to do is get through here, get you a great degree. And then if you want to be an engineer, if you want to be an engineer, a lawyer, or whatever you want to do, architect, when you get out, just open you up to practice and hire you the people to work for you. I was like, okay, I've never heard that before. He said, you can hire anybody that you want to do, hire the skills. You don't have to be an engineer yourself or get the degree. You can open an engineering firm and hire all the engineers you want. And so that was changed my entire mindset. And so what I said is, let me do this then. Let me get the degree in courses that I like to write about and that I'm interested in. And so sociology was one of those areas because I liked the professors. And then the class we were taking, like medical sociology, criminology, sociology of the family, And then it allowed me to take, at that point, I was getting into the Afrocentric and African American history. So it allowed me to write about, leaders like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, study the African diaspora, listening to folks like Tony Browder and Asa Hilliard. And we were bringing those folks to campus. And Ivan Van Sertima, all those people were coming to campus. And I was just so enlightened on that history. And so all of my papers and all of my studies became around that. And so sociology allowed me to build upon that. And that's where I developed this sociology. And then later on, I understood that sociology is about how groups of people think and react to world events. And so that played a big part into what I do now is trading and investing in stocks. And that's about way groups of people react to financial markets and behavioral finance. And so my background in sociology really plays a big part when I'm studying and looking at graphs and statistics and charts.
Thank you for explaining that, because I know people are like, what is he doing with a sociology degree? And he's running a bit, you know what I'm saying? So interesting to see how that connects and everything. So you started your first business in college, right?
Yes. My wife, my current wife, and she was my girlfriend at the time and just friend when we first started out in college. We started out doing T-shirts, and the T-shirt was I had to do a paper. Well, I had to take a class, independent study on Martin Luther King and Malcolm X's. I was looking at their philosophies and how they were the same and how they were different. Mm-hmm. And so as a part of that independent study, I decided to create a T-shirt with the historical picture of Martin and Malcolm together. And on the back, it had the quote is, they say Martin is for freedom and they say I'm for separation. So no, what we're for is freedom. And so I created that shirt with my spouse, my current spouse. And then we sold that shirt to folks on campus, and we really built that. And so that was one of our first businesses called Positivities that we created in college. And then once we left college, we continued that business for several years after. So that was one of our first businesses that we had right out of college, is developing and designing T-shirts.
That is fascinating, man. It's very interesting right there. So as far as business goes, kind of want to ask you a little bit about, your own businesses going forward and some of the lessons that you learned from it. So, according to the U.S. Small Business Administration, over 50% of small businesses fail the first year, right? 95% fail within 5 years. So there's something that you're doing that's right? Where you still, are doing business today. So what do you think is the things that make these businesses fail? And what have you been able to do to kind of stay clean of those things and avoid them? Or have you made those mistakes?
Good question. Well, I can tell you I made every mistake that you could possibly make in business. I've lost money. I've started the wrong businesses. I've closed businesses. When we first started, we were using our own monies. We didn't have a whole lot of money to do that. And so we didn't have the ability to scale. And a lot of times we would go in and we would use, our savings and investments to purchase the products. And then we would sell them. And then, as you know, in an apparel business, you have things that, maybe go out of style, or you have leftovers or runovers or those kind of things. And so as we were doing business, we were doing business and we had a good business, but we didn't have the ability to scale and do it at the level like most businesses. When they fail, they're undercapitalized. And so we used to do these events called Black Expos back in the 90s. And so Black Expos, we would be like a department store. When we set up our booth, we had things laid out, things folded. We had an event team where all the T-shirts, and so we had it laid out, but that cost us a lot of money to do that. And we were funding it ourselves for the most part. We did take on a couple of little investors, about some friends when we first started. But I think one of the reasons why most businesses fail is because they're undercapitalized, is they don't have enough runway to get it off the ground at a scale that can be sustainable and viable. And so once again, that's what we had, was we had probably too much access to capital at that point in time. So we were able to use our credit cards and borrow monies and those kinds of things. And so that Positivities business after a period of time, it just got to the point where we just couldn't keep funding it at the level that we are and keep growing without taking on additional investors. So we eventually closed that down. It's not like it is now where you can do print on demand with one shirt and have people drop ship and those kind of things. We would be buying, dozens and dozens of shirts, and then we'd have to go out and move those kits and sell them and do family reunions and different events. But it was a great learning experience I always tell people, if you can fail and fail fast and not put yourself in a situation where you can't come back, then that is a good business lesson. And so we were able to learn those lessons very on in life. Before 30 years old, we learned a lot of adult lessons, and this has helped us today in the businesses that we have.
Gotcha. So if we would say I feel like you learned a lot from those big mistakes, right? So what do you think overall looking back, would be your biggest mistake where you're like, damn, I really shouldn't have done that back then,
Well, I'll tell you one that doesn't really, it kind of has to do with business because I thought it would help me. When I was in banking, I used to finance cars to provide loans for an auto broker. And so when I left banking, I kind of kept dealing with my auto broker and started buying my own cars from them. And so here's one of the things that I will let people know. Goals are a great thing to have, and goals will pull you to or magnetize or bring things into fruition that you put down as your goal. Well, sometimes goals can get you in trouble too. Most people don't think about that. I had a goal when I was growing up and younger to get a Porsche 911 car. And so I have an auto broker, and we could go to the auction and we can get any car out there, whether it be Lamborghinis, Porsches, Ferraris, whatever. And so I had my mind on a red drop top candy apple Porsche. And so here I go to the auction with him, and there it is, the red candy apple drop top Porsche. And we could get it at the dealer's rate at the auction, a Porsche. And so I had the credit to do it. And so I bought the Porsche, a 911 red Porsche. And I'm 24 years old buying that Porsche. And it was easy to get into, but then, not having the experience of having an expensive car like that, you realize that the tires and maintenance and those things are way out of the norm for what a normal car would cost. Because, I'm used to, tires costing maybe at that time, $50, $80, $100. Well, these tires are $250 a piece, and, oil changes were a couple $100. And so just learning that goal pulled me into buying that Porsche, and it was just way too expensive for me to maintain and keep. So I eventually got rid of the Porsche. But I thought what the Porsche would do is have more clients come to me for my financial services and for business acumen. Well, that didn't work. They were trying to get their own nice cars. They would ask me where I bought the car rather than, okay, you have this great success with this car. Let me do some business with you. And so that was an early lesson that I learned. And also because I knew how to get monies and how to get credit, that kind of stuff, that actually became a little bit of a detriment to me because I was too good at being able to get those things. And so I got myself in some trouble as far as having too much credit and too much debt and trying to pay that with as you're trying to grow your business. And so I had to learn some hard financial lessons just from that. I knew all the mistakes not to make, but just because you know them doesn't mean that you won't make the mistakes.
Thank you for that. I actually know some people that use that strategy of the car thing, and they kind of have a different perspective of it. So it's interesting to hear it, from your end.
Sure.
So kind of wanted to break down just business within itself. Because like I said, your book, your business venture kind of really breaks down a business and makes it very simple. When we talk about business, what exactly are we talking about? And what is the purpose of a business? So how would you define it, and what is the purpose of it?
Well, when I look at a business, I look at it as providing a product or service to fulfill or meet a need that people have and that they're willing to pay you for. So if somebody has a need or a want, and then you have the product or service that can fulfill that need or want, and the market is big enough and they have the willingness and the ability to pay you for it, then that is the key to going in, or the solution to going into a business. If you have an idea that you want to put out, but you haven't surveyed the market to see if they're willing to, first of all, if they want it, And if they're willing to pay for it and the price point they're willing to pay, then you may start a business, but it might not be viable because you haven't researched your customer, your market, and if their willingness and ability to pay you for that.
All right. So another thing you mentioned in your book is that like the major goal should be to solve a problem. When I think about business, like, before I got hooked onto your information and just knowing in general, you would think that the major goal of a business is to make money, to profit, right?
Sure.
So why do you put solving a problem over profit?
Really, because if you're starting a business, you have to be, it can't be just about the money, because the money won't keep you in the business long enough in order for you to work 80 to 90 hours a week, or to work for no money until you start making. Because a lot of times when you start a business, you're the least person to be paid or the last person to be paid in that business. So you might be working for free. You might be working for no revenues. In order to get that business off the ground, you have to put so much effort in there. And if you're only about making the money, if you don't make those money in the first few months, weeks, or days, then you don't have the courage to stay in there and the ability to discipline to stick with it. So for a lot of times when most people start a business, they're not going to make profits the first year, or maybe 2 years. And then do you have the ability to stay in there and stick with it until the business starts at least breaking even, where your revenues and your expenses are about the same, and then start growing that and making it a viable business? That's why they say most business owners aren't really successful at their businesses, or don't really hit that critical tipping point till they're in their 50s. And the reason was because they have experiences. And then, of course, at that point in time, they probably have a little bit more money than the younger folks that are starting out. But most people, when they first start a business, they're burning through cash and revenues. I mean, the cash and their own monies before they start generating enough revenues to generate a profit. So that's why I say you want to, first of all, start something that people are willing, that they want, and they're willing to pay for, and that you have a big enough market that it can grow into scale there.
Now, you might have scared some people right there with that 50s right there. So let's say somebody's like, all right, I want to start a business. Now, Mr. Mills, Linsey's talking about in your 50s. Maybe I should just plan this whole thing out and just plan it to the T and take years and time to develop that in my mindset and everything and this and that and the third and make it perfect. But in your book, you say that is not a good idea. Like, why do you think, if I know that this is going to take so long to develop and to create a successful business, why do I not put it in the vault for 10 years, 15 years before I put it out there?
That's a great point. And let me make sure I clarify what I was saying there. I'm saying most successful business owners are in their 50s, not when you get started. And so you have to put that time in. So that time and that compound effect of all of those, you start fast and make those early failures like I did earlier on in my 20s. And that taught me a lot about when I started that second or third or fourth business, or when I was able to scale. Here's what I always tell people is, you don't want to get paralysis by analysis, where you think too much about how you want to start and why you want to start. If you have done some research and found that there's a need, start small, come up what we call the minimal viable product. That is the least amount or least prototype or presentation or something for people to get a feel for what you're trying to do. And it doesn't take much money. And so if you start and fail at that, then you already know what doesn't work, and you can pivot, you can reiterate to make changes. But I always say start something. So start a business, even if you are going to work in somebody else's business, get in the corridor and learn. So if you want to be a restaurant owner, go and work in a restaurant for someone else to learn all the ins and outs of that business. If you want to be in finance, then take some of your own money and buy a stock or an option. And, those early losses there are going to really teach you how to weather the storm, for one thing, and how to best use your money. So like you said, we always talk about, it's better to get started than to be perfect. I'd rather to get it done. So when you look at your phone, if you look at your tablet, you look at your computer software, it always has versions that it keeps updating. That means they started before it was really perfect, and they just keep updating with the different versions of there. And so, I work on a Mac computer, and every about week or so, it's got an update on the software, and it is a really high tech computer technology, but they still have to keep updating it on a periodic basis to make sure that it is doing and it's a viable piece of software.
Yeah, that's a great point right there. So along with that, I know people might think that, I've heard that, everybody should start a business. Anybody can do it. And then I've also heard from the other perspective where it's like, nah, well, you got to be this personality type to have a business. You have to be this type of person to have a business. So where do you fall along that mindset? Do you think anyone can do it, or does it take a specific type of individual?
Well, it takes someone who is willing to take a risk. I can say that, because once you're going to be in business, you're going to be risking some money, some time, and some effort. So if you have the ability to take some risk, you don't actually have to have the mindset of to actually do the work. And I've learned this later in my entrepreneurial career, because one of the things that I'm doing is I'm very curious, and I'll read all the books and listen to all the audios in order to learn a concept, in order to be in a business or to get into a different type of a business. But you can actually take your money and buy a business. You can buy a franchise, you can buy into a network, you can buy a system, and you can be in business and be an entrepreneur just from your money alone, and hiring the people who have the skill set in order to run your business. And so I think if you have the ability to look at and be curious about the problems in the world and create a business model around it, either you start that or buy the system or buy the business model or the software around it, then that still makes you an entrepreneur. So there's lots of different ways to be an entrepreneur. When we initially think about it, I think about it as, from a pure standpoint level, it's that person who on a daily basis can look at the world differently than anyone else. So the entrepreneur will see opportunity in their mind long before others will see opportunity with their eyes. And what that means is, if I go down the road, I can look at maybe a situation where a light. So there's a light there, and there needs to be a different type of a light in order to make that traffic flow better. If I'm an engineer or in that area, then I might say, well, I know that maybe LED lights are going to work better than incandescent lights in order to make that particular structure work better in different types of environments and last longer and to save money. And so if I was an engineer or in that business, I would say, well, let me present this idea to the city or the county in order to change that light. And maybe they buy my lighting system because I'm an expert in there. And so that entrepreneur just looks at everyday people, problems, and comes up with solutions, and either generates a business around that or goes and buys the software technology in order to solve that for a profit.
Got it. So I'm thinking about this business thing right now. So if I'm a Black person and I'm starting a Black business, do you think my mentality, my mindset, how I operate, success is a different formula than the other business owner, or is it the same rules, same principles, same formula?
So the way that I look at business is, you have to look at who your market is, for one thing. And a lot of times our market is going to be our natural market. Our natural market is, when we wake up in the morning, we in our community and we look around, who do we encounter on a daily basis? That's your natural market. And so if that's your natural market, then that's going to be your natural clientele, or who you're going to be talking to about your business. In other situations is if you have the ability to get in other communities, or if you have the expertise where people and money will find you. If you have a solution to a problem and it is profitable, or people have a big enough need, the money will find you. But if no matter what color you are, when I say money is green, We look at Robert Smith, and we look at Oprah Winfrey, and we look at folks like that. They were able to solve needs in the business world, and their clients are all kinds of colors. However, your natural market tends to be who you start doing business with first, and then you might branch out to other markets eventually.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So another component of everything is obviously writing a business plan. And everybody says, well, you got to write a business plan before anything gets started and this and that and the third. And I've heard so many numbers of the numbers of pages, how much you got to look into it. But in your book, you say 1 page. So why do you say 1 page? And what should I be thinking about for my business plan if I'm just doing it on 1 page?
That's a great point. Well, the funniest thing is, when I was a banker, we would have people come in and they say they want to start a business, they want to borrow some money. So they'd come in and sometimes they'd have these long 50-page business plans that they paid somebody or got some software in order to produce. Well, we ain't look at those plans. We're like, we got time to read all this stuff. All we want to know is, can you pay us this money back? And so we were making the loans based on that person, as far as their character, their credit, their collateral, and their ability to pay that monies back. And it was more so based on that person and their finances rather than the business. Then once the business gets up and running and it shows it has the ability to cash flow and repay, then we look more so at the business. But the reason why I tell people the 1-page business plan is because if you can take this 1 page, and we use the lean business model, it talks about what are the problems, 3 problems that are out there around the concept that you have. What are your 3 solutions? And then who is your target market? Have you already identified a target market that you know and have interviewed and say that if you came up with this product or service, they would be willing to pay for it? And then what is your unique selling proposition? How are you different than everybody else out there in the market? Also, what have you done, those key indicators that you've already done? Have you set up a website? Have you made some sales? Have you talked to people about what you're doing? Have you interviewed other or worked in the industry? What are those key things that you're doing? And then what kind success have you had so far? Maybe you've sold a few items and people really liked them. They've given you some reviews. And then who are you going to bring in as part of your team? Mm-hmm. And so all of that is, we only need 3 or 4 answers or bullet points per section in order to determine if that business plan is viable and how you can talk about it. And so if you can do that, then you can develop an entire business around that. Most people who are writing these 50, 60-page business plans, a lot of it is just fluff. And even the numbers that they put in there, they're just projections. There's no real numbers in there. People are just projecting on what they think is going to happen until you get into the business. And then that's when reality sets in.
Fascinating, man. Fascinating. I'm sure you're saving people 1,000 hours right now, because a lot of us don't think about 1 page and think that's going to be sufficient, man. So thank you for that. All right. So got my business plan out, starting to run everything. Everything's going smoothly. How do I keep it going smoothly? And how do I build something that's going to last? Because when you think about a business, it's almost like an expiration date at some point, because all these businesses that we thought would be around forever and ever and ever, Blockbuster, whoever was making the cassettes and the CDs and all these things that just transition over time, they go out of business. Toys R Us, all these companies that we grow up with, we think is going to be around forever, they don't last. Do you think that is the natural business cycle where you have that life, you have that growth, and then eventually death? Or is there any way to prolong your business to go on and on and on and on? What do you think about that?
So, yeah, I think you have to keep reiterating as you grow and progressing, especially as technology comes. When you mentioned a few of them, you mentioned Toys R Us. Everybody used to, as kids and parents used to go, and Toys R Us is literally the building used to be a mile from where I live. And I used to see that place packed on every Christmas, going into Christmas Eve, those kinds of things. And then I think of other ones like Borders. Everybody used to go in there. I used to go and read the books, but technology came in, and companies like Amazon and Apple, those kinds of companies came in with technology. They weren't in the business toys or the business of books, but they brought in the technology, which is high-speed internet, which is just video, which is being able to do transactions online. So the technology came in where people who may not have been experienced in that particular industry, but they brought in the technology to make it easier for people to do business or transactions. And so if I can go on my computer and I can look up all of the toys that are for 8-year-olds, and I can order it and it's at my door in 1 or 2 days, then why would I consistently go out and try to fight the crowds and everything at a retail store in order to buy that same toy, which is going to be more expensive than me ordering it online? Or if I could have 3,000 books on my inch thick piece of technology that I can take around, and I have 3,000 books that I can walk around with all day long, and it weighs 2 pounds or less. Right. Why do I continue to go and buy these books at a retail store and have to keep expanding my library at home in order to keep all these books? And so that technology came in and disrupted the business models and eventually put those companies out of business, because they had the ability to, Barnes & Noble and Borders had the ability to buy an Amazon very early on. Toys R Us had the ability to buy, some of these companies very early on because they had the monies and the resources. However, they chose to keep doing the business like they were doing it. And eventually, the technology and the way people's buying patterns and habits just put them out of business.
That is very, very interesting. So what if you have somebody that's like, you know what, I got the formula. I'm going to make my business for everybody, and my target's going to be everybody. So somebody's going to stick here or there whenever, we're going through something. I could just focus on this and that and the third. But in your book, you say you can't focus on everybody. Why not?
Because you'll run out of money. You cannot market and serve everyone, and because you will eventually run out of money. Just think about, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Disney, all of those types of businesses. They still have to narrow it down to who their target market is. And so if you have a company like Honda serves a specific marketplace for the Honda brand. So when Honda was going to branch into another type of business, then they created luxury models. And so same thing with Toyota. Toyota has the Toyota brand, but when they went to the luxury market, they created Lexus. Lexus is still owned by Toyota, but people know what a Toyota is. It's very reliable. It's very economical. It's easy to work on. But when they wanted to go to that exclusive or affluent market, they didn't make it a Toyota exclusive car. They made the Lexus brand, and Lexus, even though it's owned by Toyota, it's a totally different market. When you go and get your Lexus serviced, it's the same chassis as a Toyota Avalon or a Toyota Camry, but it has some different features in it to give that luxury buyer that affluent buyer, the kind of treatment that they would like to have. And so that's why I tell you can't take one brand or one company and try to meet the needs of everyone. You have to have that niche or you'll run out of money is basically what it is.
That makes sense. All right. Another component that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough is building a solid team. So now, you say I should get started with it anyway, right? If I don't got it all together, do I need the team first, or do I just get started, find a team within, at some point in time? And then with the team, is there a success formula? What should I be looking for when I'm formulating my team?
Oh, that's very interesting. When we first started, we just built upon, it was just two of us, my wife, Michelle, and myself. And we kind of complemented each other because I was the big idea person to to go start first and figure it out later on all the details. But she's the detail process data person to keep it all and make sure it's done right and it looks good. I'm saying, well, let's just do it and then we'll figure it out along the way. So we kind of work pretty good together in that. And later on in our business careers of several years ago, we created or adopted this model called the colors of why and the colors of money. And it's kind of a personality assessment where we identified 4 personality types. We call the red, the blues, the greens, and the yellows. The reds are the entrepreneurial, the CEO type personalities that just are go-getters and to make things happen. And then we had the blues. The blues are that social personality that can actually market and get people excited about the product and get people to events. So that's the blues. Then we have the greens. The greens are the number counters, the accountants, the engineers to make sure the data is done right, all the numbers and all the money is straight. And then we have what we call the yellows. The yellows are your customer service people. When people call in, they get great customer service. Everything is taken care of. The customers feel good. And so when we're looking at building a team, we look at just those colors and say, do we have these colors on our team, or do we have the skill sets in order to meet all these colors here in order to build a great team? Now, you don't have to have all that when you start out, but as you start making more money, you need to develop these such that your customer service is taken care of. You might not be the entrepreneurial type or the CEO type that wants to go meet with investors or partners. And so you might need that person. You might need someone who is the salesperson. I can tell people is if you don't have the ability to sell, your business is not going to grow. So if you don't have the ability to sell, you can always go hire a salesperson or a manufacturing rep or a representative. And then you always have to have that person who knows how to get people excited, who, if you have an event, they can get people to the event. Or you might have a great idea, but no one shows up and they're not excited about it. And so you have to have that person who is that marketer, that social butterfly.
Giving me so much ideas right now, man. I'm getting excited. All right. So eventually you say that you want to scale your business eventually, right? And you just mentioned investors, but you say like when you're talking to investors, it's completely different than when you're talking to customers. So can you elaborate on that and share with us, like, how do I speak to the investors and what makes it different than the customer?
Sure. Now, when you're talking to investors, I always look at it like this. Investors are people who have money, and their money is looking for how they can make more money. So if you have a great idea that has the ability to make money, even if it's in the early stages, if you have the ability to sell that dream, to sell the dream to the investor that it's better to put their money with you and to get a better return on investment than in their bank or with some other type of investment they have, that's the conversation that you need to have with investors, because an investor is not looking for a return of their money. They're not worried about if they lose the money or not. Their biggest motivation is a return on their money. They're like, if I put this money out there, can it bring back more money or have the potential to bring back more money than when I put out? Most investors, they lose on lots of their different investments. So they understand that they're putting monies at risk. That's why they're investors. And so if you have the ability to sell the dream of the potential or the future of that business, and you're willing to give up some equity or give up or pay them back, or however you're going to get a return on their money, that is what they're looking for. So money is always looking to where it's best treated. Now, when you're talking to customers want a great experience or a great product or a great service. So they don't care how big your business grows or whatever. They just want to make sure you have taken care of their need or their want in the servicing or the product that you're offering.
Man, that makes sense. Okay, so got the investing, got the plan, got everything together. My business is scaling. Linsey Mills gave me the jewels, the gems. We growing, we making good money. You know what I'm saying? I should be trying to make more money. But in your book, you're talking about I need to give money away now? Why should I be giving money away if I'm working so hard and we doing it now? And the whole idea was to make money. So now I'm just going to give money? Like, what's that concept about?
So that's philanthropy. And I learned that very early on from my grandmother and my family is, my grandmother, she never had a lot of money. what people would think in terms of just pure finances or economic standing. But she would always find ways to give kids and nephews and nieces money. And so she would always, put $20 in my hand and tell me don't tell nobody. And she would do that thing. And so that was, and I didn't really think about it at that point in time, but that was her philanthropy. She was investing in me, her grandson, who was going to college. He was doing, pretty good in school. So that was her investment in me, trying to say, I'm helping you out. I might not have much, but I have some to help you out and to give you a leg up in this world. And so, from that, I've always in church, you learn in church too, to give, 10% and to give your piece of the money. Before you even had any money, your parents would give you a few coins to put in the plate when it came by to teach you the behaviors of what it means to give. And so when you're learning to put those coins in very early on, when you learn to give when you have little, then it won't be hard to give when you have a lot more. And so I learned that very early on. And then when I went to Davidson College on a football, I went on a combination of a merit scholarship for education and then also to play football. And so because there was a package put together, when I went, there was a few $1,000s per year that my academic and didn't cover. And so the coach there found an investor or a donor at that point in time, a donor to provide the additional dollars to make mine just about a full ride. And so I had a chance to meet that donor, when I first got to campus. And my biggest thing was at that point in time, for me to go to school for 1 year was $16,000, where the other schools that I was looking at was $4,000 per year. And I was like, well, a $16,000 a year college versus $4,000 a year college, there must be something here. So I think I'm going to pick the higher price college in order to go to. But what interests me about that is at that point in time, that donor of that scholarship also had a kid in school who was paying the full price, I would think, of $16,000, but he had enough money to help me go to school too. And so that was my idea of there's people out here who have enough money or assets. And at that time, I didn't know how they did it, but they had enough money in order to not only send their kids to school, pay full price, but also to help someone that they didn't know. And that was when I learned about, philanthropy from a greater standpoint of just helping your own family. And so once I got out of school, I had the ability to talk with two of my good friends, one from high school and one from college, about philanthropy and how do you pool your dollars together and set up foundations or funds in order to help the greater community, to do it in a what we call an organized or a structured manner. And one of those ways is a giving circle. And so I was part of the founding of the next generation of African-American philanthropists out of the Triangle area, which is a Raleigh-Durham area. My wife and I joined with other young professionals, and we started pooling our dollars and finding worthy causes and worthy organizations. And we would pool our dollars together, and we would give monies away. And then we were able to meet Lynetta Gilbert, who was one of the matriarchs of teaching us about philanthropy, in which we won the award for him several years later, which was an award that was named on her behalf from the Community Investment Network. And we just learned to structure our philanthropy and teach a lot of other people how to create giving circles, how to organize their philanthropy, and created a network of philanthropists of color across the country.
Man, that is so powerful, man. Amazing work right there. And you say worthy cause. Asking for a friend, what would you deem to be a worthy cause?
So here's what I always tell people is if you're helping to make your community better, whether that be in education, whether that be in bettering your community from one of the organizations we funded early on, it was a rural community that they didn't have clean drinking water because the way the city and the county was working is they weren't having cleaning their water in a way that it was clean to drink. And so that concept was, how can we help this organization go to Washington and lobby for what they're trying to do in order to just have clean drinking water for their community. And so our first $5,000 or $10,000 that we gave away was to help that organization lobby on behalf of their community. Other organizations we've given to is teaching kids financial literacy. We've given to organizations that were helping the homeless, providing shelter for people who were homeless. And so any of those types of causes that we feel passionate about, and that we have the ability, we might not have the ability to fund all of the need, but can we help maybe with some challenge dollars, or to help them get to that next level and to show that they are a viable organization so that they can leverage that and get more money? That's also a way that we do it.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. How do, people that are interested in, your philanthropy get in touch with you guys or seek it out?
Yes. So on Facebook, and we have a website that's connected to Facebook. It's called NGAP Fund. It's NGAAP Fund.org. And that is our website there. And there's also the community. It's called thecommunityinvestment.org. And that is a organization where it's a network of giving circles across the country that are in their own communities, helping organizations and helping causes in every community, or lots of communities around the country, put it that way.
Man, that is powerful, man. That is powerful. Powerful information today, man. So before we close out, I kind of wanted to get into a quick little activity called What's Your Favorite? Identifying a few of your favorite things, getting to know you a little more. In your books, you mentioned a lot about reading to get, information and to find out about businesses and things like that. So when looking at businesses, finances, what are some of your favorite books?
So one of the books that I first started with was Think and Grow Rich. That book really kind of taught me mindset about, your thoughts and putting those thoughts together and acting upon those and keeping that discipline. So that was one of the first books that I read on just the whole mindset about business and keeping that for at the forefront. And then, of course, a lot of people have read or heard about Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read that too. And what I really got out of that book is assets versus liabilities. Is assets that put money in your pocket. Liabilities are what, takes money out of your pocket, and just having a good concept of that. And then, I read all types of books to understand concepts. And so, I've read books on Millionaire Next Door, which I wanted to really understand, who are the real millionaires. I saw it in the bank, but I wanted to see what that profile was. And that's where I talked about people who are 50 years old being most of the millionaires, because they've had that experience, had the ability and time to save money and have experiences in life. So, of course, we have the Bible as the ability to look and read and look at those, even though we have historical stories, there are things that you can apply to life. And then one of the books that really got me, and it's not a business book, but it got me interested in reading to gather information and have an impact, was the autobiography of Malcolm X, which I read my first year in college. And so that book taught me that the words and the knowledge that you have is more powerful than anything else. And you can become so powerful with that knowledge and your ability to deliver that in a charismatic manner that people be even willing to eliminate you because that knowledge and that information is so powerful. And so that was one of the first books that I really read and delved into, and that got me into reading all of the other books, the thousands of books that I've read and the libraries that I have accumulated because of the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Man, that is a classic. Powerful, powerful, powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Listeners, definitely get those books. do you have like favorite businesses that you look at like as this is the model of excellence when you think about business?
Well, I always look at Chick-fil-A as one of the businesses that I think has some of the best customer service in the industry. One of the things is because when I worked there, I learned about customer service. I learned about delivering a quality product, even though it was more expensive than most of the other fast food restaurants at that time. We delivered a quality product, and we only hired good, friendly people. And they always ask people, why are people so nice at Chick-fil-A and friendly? Is because they only hire nice and friendly people. And if they find out they're not nice and friendly, then they won't be there long enough for you to see them. So that's one company that I had firsthand experience with. Another company that I had firsthand experience with with American Express. I actually worked at their call center as in several different areas, for being a small business consultant to being in human resources and hiring, and looking at them. And that's where I really learned that your service to be service is sales. So what American Express does is they have the servicing part. When you call into American Express, they service your cards at an exceptional level, and they service it for no charge. But during that process, they are talking to you about other products and other services, and they're trying to just build and deepen that relationship with you. So I've learned in that aspect is you overserve your current customers and clientele, and that is the best marketing that you could ever have, is over servicing your current client.
Indeed. Thank you for that one. What would you say are some of your favorite ways to make money? Because I feel like there's a million and one ways that businesses can make money. So what are some of the ones that you look at and you're like, these ones are like, some of my favorite are legit?
Well, one of the quotes that I use is that your imagination has the ability to solve your financial problems. And so if you have the ability to think in a way that can create a product or service that can make you money just from your imagination, that is one of the most rewarding things about generating revenues. One of the best ways I like to make money is I trade. I kind of day trade. So that means I buy and sell stocks or futures or commodities, whether it be oil or gas or Tesla or Apple. On a daily basis, I do those. And so the ability for me to look at a oil commodity or a stock or an index, the S&P, for instance, and be able to create a trade that generates money instantly in my account. Now, during that period of I'm holding it, it might go up or down, but the ability to just hit a button and a couple $1,000 or $500 or $200 or whatever instantly goes into my account, where I'm able to sell before I have to buy it back. And all I'm doing is waiting for the time to run out on that particular trade. That is the most interesting money that I have ever made, because for so long, I didn't know that was possible, that you could just put on a transaction and put monies into your account immediately just from your knowledge base. But you do have to have some money to put up as like a bond or collateral in order to do that transaction. Right. But that is the most interesting money that I currently am in the process of making. But then the other money that I really enjoy is passive income. It means you do something one time. Maybe you write a book, or you create a podcast, or you create a piece of intellectual property, and people buy that over time, over and over again. And you've written it or you've done the activity one time, but you get paid over and over again for that particular effort that you put forth.
Interesting. So you've been around quite a number of people, professionals, business owners, all types of folks that passing around valuable information. So what would you say would be like your favorite life gem that anybody has given you?
Is look for who, not why. I'm sorry, who, not how. And what that means is for the longest, any type of activity or business that I wanted to start, I always read and delved myself in and tried to figure out how I was going to do it. But what I've learned pretty recently here is don't look for so much research on how you're going to do something, but look for who can do it for you or who you can bring on your team in order to do that. And that gives you the ability to scale. Because if I want to get into any business now, I tell people for the longest, I've advised people on, buying real estate and investing in real estate. And some of my clients are multimillionaires on their real estate ventures, but I just never had the interest in doing real estate myself because I'm not big into, fixing up and repair things that are broken, that kind of stuff, or taking something and flipping it and putting all this money into it and then selling it. Mm-hmm. But what I discovered is I don't have to be the one to do the flipping and the repairs and all that. I can always team up with someone who has an interest in doing that, and maybe they need an investment partner, because I can always put some money into it if it's a viable venture. And that's the way that I can participate in it or leverage and scale it without me having to actually know how to do it. I just need to know who is involved in that and who I can partner up with in order to do that.
That's like a gem bomb right there, man. That is powerful information, man. Wow. Thank you, man. Thank you. I know you said you just figured it out.
I just figured it out. And because I had always figured is if I don't know how to do it myself, if I can't take the lead on it, then it's not a business for me. But it just opened my eyes and says, and then, once I started having some more disposable income or those kind of things, like I said, as an investor, now I'm just looking, you look for ways that your money can get a return on investment. I don't need really a return on that money that I'm investing. I'm sorry, I don't need a return of that money I'm investing. I just want a return on the money. I want that money to go out and work and make more money. And then also at this point in my financial career, professional career, and personal, I'm looking to partner up with folks who have that energy, who want to do things, and partner up with them and then let them scale. And maybe I can give them some advice, some expertise, and some monies in order to do that. But I don't have to be doing the legwork in order to make that happen.
Man, thank you for that. So it seems like you're building quite a legacy for yourself with all the work that you've been doing, man. So when the book, the autobiography comes out and everything, what is it that you want there to be about your legacy and the work that you've been doing?
Well, the one of the things that I learned from one of my mentors, I never met him, but I read all of his books and listened to a lot of his audios, is Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn is a great business philosopher and educator for many peoples in business and network marketing. So he talked about one of the things that always has stuck with me is best return or thank you I can never get was to be part of someone's testimony. And so if their testimony says that at some point in time, something I said or something I did or imparted to them was part of their success and helped them, if I can be part of their testimony, that is one of the greatest returns on investment of what I've been doing over these years. And so that's the legacy that I'm trying to create at this point.
Powerful. All right. Man, thank you so much for your time today, Mr. Mills, and just giving us so many gems. I got to listen to this like 10, 15, 20 times to make sure I got it. And listeners, please do as well. Before we leave off, do you think you could leave us with your favorite quote and what it means to you?
All right. But before I leave, I just want to make sure that people understand that what you're doing is a gift to, the world, because the people that you're interviewing and then the knowledge that you have as you're going through this process and learning and educating people and providing this platform, it gives people the opportunity to learn from, people like myself who they may have never get a chance to meet, but through your network and your connections, we can make a connection together. And eventually I might be able to help somebody, or somebody might be able to help me based on, listening to what you're doing. And so you're being that vessel and being part of people's testimony. So thank you for reaching out to me and having me on your show. I really appreciate that opportunity.
Man,
so now I need to answer your question, but thanks for what you're doing.
Yes, sir. Pleasure is mine, man. I've gained way more than you have. Trust me.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate it. But one of the things that I just always have imparted is something called the wonderful paradox. And the wonderful paradox says that I'll get more fun and enjoy more financial success when I stop trying to get what I want and start helping other people get what they want.
That makes a ton of sense. So for those of us that do want to hit you up, ask you about some business stuff or consult or whatever it is, where can people find you and get in contact with you?
So my business website is Collins, CALLINZ.com, Collins.com. That represents the Collins Group. You can find me on Instagram at Simply Outrageous is my handle, at Simply Outrageous. And those are the best ways to kind of touch base directly with me. If you want to just put in my name, Linsey Mills, Linsey, and you'll see quotes and videos and all kinds of things that I have on the internet. Because one of the things that I've always been interested in is great quotes that people have that I've learned over the years. And so I didn't wait for people to actually quote me. I actually put out my own quotes and put them online and across the web and Twitter and different places. So it's amazing that people have picked up my quotes. And so I'm showing up on some of the list of top financial quotes, top business quotes, top quotes for kids. And so it's funny when I do searches, sometimes I'll find these quotes and I'm on the list. So very interesting to do that. And so you can find me anywhere on the internet. LinseyMills.com. You can also find me if you put in Simply Outrageous. I'm there too. And of course, Your Business Venture, the book, is on Amazon, but you can also find that on our websites.
Man, I think we will definitely be having you back on the program. You're like a wealth of information and knowledge, and we definitely need that. The culture needs that. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, man. And thank you for coming through, man.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and congratulations on all the success of your programming.
Appreciate it. Listeners, definitely share the program. I think anybody that is starting a business, that has a business, that wants to grow their business, definitely needs to read Mr. Mills' book and definitely needs to follow what he is saying. Rewind the program a couple times and pick up some of the things so you don't make some of the mistakes that he made, some of the mistakes that most people make. And, we can do business accordingly. So definitely hit him up, read the books, and we will definitely have him back on. And of course, remember, your mind is the most powerful tool in the universe. Therefore, if you can think it, you can do it. If you believe in it, you can be it. And if you fight for it, you can have it. The world is yours. This has been your host, Mr. G, and I will see you next time on MasterMine.
So every day I'm going hard. I'm talking business, bank accounts, and credit cards. And somehow we defeat the odds and making sure that no one starves illegal or you had a